Good afternoon and welcome. On behalf of the National Catholic Educational Association, thank you for joining us for this professional development opportunity. I'm Christy, NCEA's facilitator for today's webinar, Pay Better Attention, a Framework of Awareness. A few quick points before we begin. This session is being recorded and will be available soon on ncea.org through your membership portal. We value your input. Please submit questions and comments through the Q&A box. We'll respond as time allows before the end of today's session. And lastly, stay with us. After the presentation, we'll share a link to the survey and instructions on receiving your certificate of completion. With that being said, it is my pleasure to give a Texas-sized welcome to our presenters, President Chris Rebuck and Principal Chad Riley of Bishop Lynch High School from the great Roman Catholic Diocese of Dallas. Gentlemen, we'll turn it over to you. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Christy, and good afternoon to all of our participants. We're so pleased to be able to spend this time with you this afternoon with a topic that's very, very important to both of us. Chad and I have had the privilege to serve together in the president-principal model here at Bishop Lynch for the last 8 years. So with a brief introduction, we'd like to just kind of lay the groundwork for who we are as Catholic educators. We'll begin with a prayer, and then we'll jump right into what we think is a very important topic. I'm originally from the Diocese of Charleston, South Carolina, and I went through Catholic schools all the way through grad school. So I'm a product of Catholic education. I was really, really instrumental for me to see the examples of my parents, who were both educators. My mom, a first grade teacher for over 45 years, and my dad, with a late in life career change, took on a master's in special education. And it really inspired me as a high school student to see the ability to help and serve students of all backgrounds. I've been here at Bishop Lynch as an employee for 17 years, first as the Dean of Students and the last 10 as the President. And I have the great, great privilege of serving with a wonderful principal, Dr. Chad Riley. I'll let him give a little bit of his background, and then we'll open with prayer.
Thanks, Chris. The journey for me into Catholic high school administration feels like a very natural evolution. I have always loved school ever since I was in the first grade, and it's something that I've enjoyed the community. I've enjoyed being with a community of learners, and so as the journey progressed for me into the world of teaching and then into administration, one of the things that I realized I needed to learn was how to function as an administrator. Once you become an administrator, you become involved in leadership, you realize that the skill set to function effectively as an administrator exceeds beyond the technical aspects and the artistic aspects of being a classroom teacher. And so it's learning like this, like how to pay better attention and how to cultivate a framework for awareness that has been very important for me in my own journey of learning how to be a leader. This is my 8th year serving at Bishop Lynch as the principal, and Chris and I have been on this journey together for how we can pay better attention. In this president-principal model, we've identified areas that we need to focus on individually, but also together. And so when we talk about this framework, this helps each of us in our own roles, but it also informs the conversations that we have together as co-leaders of Bishop Lynch High School. So much of what you'll hear today is from our own journey of learning and some of our own experiences, things that we have tried and things that have not worked well for us. And hopefully we've learned and have some takeaways that we're going to be able to share with you all. This is my 25th year in Catholic education. And my family is involved in Catholic education. All 4 of my children are in Catholic schools or have gone through Catholic schools. My wife is a Catholic school teacher. So all of these leadership principles and ways that we can focus our attention are important for me professionally and also personally. Chris and I both aspire to be integral leaders and use the lessons that we continue to learn in all aspects of our lives. So Chris is going to start us out with a prayer, which is a beautiful prayer that joins together our intentionality for you all today.
So let us begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Lord of all time, you are not hurried, yet you hold all things together. You are not distracted, yet you see each of us fully. Teach me to be still in your presence and focused in my purpose. May I steward each hour as a gift, not for busyness, but for building your kingdom. Help me to see interruptions as invitations and to choose what matters over what clamors for attention. Let my attention reflect my vocation to lead, to serve, and to love in your name. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thanks, Chris. So what I'd like to do is share with the group what are going to be the main themes that we will walk through today. So our presentation is divided up into three main sections. And the overall goal, the lens that we're using for all three of the themes, is to pay better attention. Each of the themes will be centered on either attention is stewardship, discernment versus distraction, and then on the more practical level, intentional tools as spiritual disciplines. So what we would like to be able to do today is make the case for the importance of paying better attention, and we will frame that within the Catholic faith. And then we will start then going a little bit deeper on the tools. How are we able to discover the difference between discernment versus distraction? Again, this will be framed within the context of the Catholic faith. And then thirdly, what we'd like to leave you with is a basket of a few tools that you can take with you to help you in this journey of paying better attention.
Yes, Chad mentioned a little bit about us being on this journey together, and it not only being about kind of a professional practice of getting better at this, but it really does come down to a personal practice of how we show up as leaders, both in our families, in our marriages, but in our life as Catholic educators. So this is something that has been really kind of an ongoing personal journey, and by no means are Chad or I like expert practitioners in this. So we aim to share this journey and these three paradigms with you as a way to kind of share our own journey. So I'm going to enter a question into the chat because we would love to get some reactions from all of you as we kind of get into the motion of this, and as we walk into the first part of this, which is attention as stewardship. I'm putting that here now, and in your Q&A you can add some of your answers to this. And the question is, what is currently hijacking your attention? So it can be a word, a phrase, a concept, an idea, but anything that you feel like that might be something for us to hear from you, so that maybe we can have an opportunity to just kind of hear from everyone who's participating today. So we'll start with that. So I think one of the things that we'd like to present to you is, why do we think this matters? Why would we want to share our journey in attention management with you? And I think very, very clearly, our focus really is an important part of what we do from a behavior standpoint. So we kind of think about what we focus on kind of defines our inner state. Like, what are those things internally that kind of drive us towards behaviors or actions? And so both personally and professionally, we feel, Chad and I both feel very strongly that what you choose to focus on is a reflection of who you are as a person and as a professional. And we often kind of talk about walking the talk. So people know that if you're inauthentic about who you are and what your values are, it's going to be very clear, especially for us in a high school setting. High school students and faculty are particularly good at kind of seeing through that. And so we think this is really important, that we get better at our practice of focus so that we can be aligned with our values and our mission and our vocation. We also think that this development of our own personal and professional path is a moral obligation that we have, not only for ourselves, but for setting an example for other leaders in our building. And so we talk a lot about what does it mean to make a moral case for the development of others, both at the student level, but also at the faculty, staff, and parent level. And so managing attention, we believe, is a moral act, and we have a responsibility to that. And finally, we believe that Catholic education should set an example for a framework or a paradigm that leads to greater human flourishing.
Yeah, Chris, at the beginning, you had mentioned that in your opening prayer, you had used the focus on the word attention. And I remember early on when we began this journey, you and I had learned the difference between time management and attention management. Because I think especially earlier in our journeys when we were learning to be school administrators and leaders, we attended numerous seminars, and kind of the vocabulary of the day was about time management. And I still hear that referred to from time to time. But I think for us as people who are responsible for the vision and the mission of an institution, and also the vision and mission of other communities, including our own families, that it's more nuanced than just managing your time, because you can be, you can have your time, your calendar set correctly, and yet be inattentive. You can be physically present in a space, but your attention can still be mismanaged or not managed correctly. So I like the way you frame that in the opening prayer about the focus being on attention management, and there's some intentionality behind the use of that term.
Yeah, and as we move forward, I think, Chad, it's really important too that as Catholic leaders, we frame this from really kind of a grounding in Scripture. So I know this was something from Scripture that was important to you to kind of share as we enter into this journey.
Yeah, this this passage from the book of Proverbs to me really spoke about the importance of this idea of attention management. Even though it may not use the word attention management, to me, it is related to the use of the author's term vision, because it's important to maintain some focus on this vision, and then you see the consequences of the failure to do so. This current translation, this is from the Revised New American Bible, says that the people lose restraint. There are some versions of this quote that say the people perish, a much more dire way of expressing what happens. But the stakes of attention management are high, especially for us as leaders of Catholic institutions, because the time that we have with students is very limited. In our particular setting, in a high school where we have the students from grades 9 through 12, we only have them for 720 days. So it is really important for us to remain laser focused on this vision. And attention management is a term that we often use to remind ourselves of the importance of maintaining a focus on this vision. And then the second half of this quote follows instruction, but if you look at the broader context of what the author is saying, it's instruction in the ways of the Lord. So it's not simply a matter of doing what you're told to do, but it's maintaining the vision of why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that you'll see that unfold throughout the course of our webinar today, that this is not just a matter of making better use of time and attention, but there's actually some intentionality about why it's important, which is ultimately connected to this issue of stewardship. So for me, Proverbs 29:18 is about stewardship. And this is all done through the lens of our Catholic faith and through leadership in Catholic schools.
The quote that I wanted to kind of start with is this from Anthony DeMello's book called Awareness. And I think for me, Chad obviously framed that well from kind of a scriptural sense, but the sense of an administrator in today's environment, it sometimes feels like you're balancing or juggling a lot of kind of juggling balls that are on fire at one time, right? So you're like holding them and burning yourself in like this constant motion of like feeling out of control, or like a sense of controlled chaos. And so this is where we hope to make a strong argument that if you can work on an intentional practice of an awareness model for yourself, you have the ability to kind of take over and to slow down all of that hectic kind of frenetic work that happens around the life or the orbit of an administrator. So what you're aware of, you're in control of, and what you're not aware of is in control of you. This was something I felt like we want you to hear that we're in it. We know what it's like. And this is a real issue when we talk about longevity of leadership or even service in Catholic schools, high rates of burnout. This is a pragmatic and a practical approach to helping people live more fully in the mission field of Catholic education. And so this is why this for me, this quote was one that really helped me to drive home why is this so important, and what's the gift that we hope to give in having this conversation with you.
So the last two slides have focused on why attention management is important from a philosophical level. What Chris and I would like to do, starting with this slide, is to drill down a little bit further and look at this specifically for all of us as leaders and ministers in Catholic schools. And this idea from Pope Francis to us really spoke to the importance of that. Attention management is important for us specifically as ministers in Catholic schools for this very reason. So when Proverbs talks about vision, what that means for us as leaders in Catholic schools is captured by this phrase, this sentence from Pope Francis. Catholic schools are called to be places of evangelization, dialogue, and encounter. So when we think about attention management and attention being an opportunity for stewardship, our efforts at managing our attention should be in favor of this idea from Pope Francis, that the work that we do and our choices about how we're going to manage our attention should always be done with this goal in mind. If you want to use the Stephen Covey idea, begin with the end in mind, this is it for us as Catholic school educators, is beginning with the end in mind.
And then really, I think an important thing for Chad and I both in this Jubilee Year of Hope comes from the Congregation of the Holy Cross, that we are called to be people with hope to bring. And when it comes to being witness to holistic and integrated leadership, one of the critical things we feel are it's important for us to provide a legacy of hope for people who could see themselves in the path of leadership or service to Catholic schools. Too often, we kind of see the remnants of people who say, I would never want that job, right? I'd never want to do that because there's a heaviness to feeling distracted and kind of constantly drawn into the idea of not being focused on the most important thing. So for Chad and I both, this was really kind of the culmination piece. So Chad, I know this was something that was really important to you, and it's been a part of our reflection very, very recently and kind of in an ongoing way.
I think what's really hit home for Chris and me is the fact that we are in a Jubilee year and we are called to be pilgrims of hope. And we hope to be able to share just a deeper reflection on that theme with you at the end of the presentation. But this very simple phrase for us has been a great motto for addressing the needs of our students and their families, and frankly, our faculty and staff, because we have a spiritual responsibility to them as well. And Chris and I, even to one another as president and principal at Bishop Lynch High School, is we recognize that hope is something that many people need, and we have to continue to bring people back to hope. Chris and I currently are reading together Hope Does Not Disappoint. He and I have a practice once a week. We call it Faith Friday, where we exercise together our spiritual leadership. And so we're currently reading the bull from Pope Francis, Hope Does Not Disappoint. And one of the themes that has come up in that particular document from Pope Francis is the importance of signs, looking for signs of hope in the world, but also there's a challenging call to be signs of hope in the world. And Chris and I have really taken this challenge to heart, that he and I, through our leadership, but also through the communities that we are a part of, our own families, that we also have the responsibility to be signs of hope for others. And that's part of what it provides for us, the fuel and the motivation to be engaged in this webinar, is because we feel that the weight of that responsibility, and we also want to be signs of hope for others who are on this same journey. So being called to be people with hope to bring is part of that vision that Proverbs talks about. And for all of us in our roles of being Catholic school leaders and those involved in ministry in Catholic schools.
So that kind of closes out our first section here, where we hope we made a good argument that your attention is one of the wonderful gifts that needs to be stewarded in your life. And so we're going to shift into the second portion of our thoughts to share with you here today. But I wanted to just visit a couple of the questions, the answers to our question of what is currently hijacking your attention as we move into this next phase. So we're gonna hopefully start really getting into this idea of how do we reclaim this for ourselves. And so before we do that, I just want to visit here quickly some of the answers to that question. What's currently hijacking your attention? So Jennifer shares everyone's needs. So kind of maybe the sense of carrying the burden of everyone else. Tiffany shared trying to meet all the needs of students, parents, and teachers. And Megan shared things left undone or that need doing. So definitely I can relate to all of those, feeling that sense that in leadership or in the service of Catholic education, whether as a teacher or another staff member, there's a lot that can easily take over that sense of where our attention is. So thank you for sharing those. And if others want to add in a comment or an answer to that question, we'd love to revisit that. So
Chris, I think later on
yeah.
when we get deeper into the presentation, I think that these are really important ideas to acknowledge that we need to come back to, because as we get to the reality of some of of making decisions in favor of vision and mission, that there are some natural, we use the word trade-offs that have to occur. And I think that will be an important consideration for us later on when we can revisit these, because the fact of the matter is we all have to get comfortable with the reality that if we are going to make mission-driven decisions and we're going to focus on those decisions that are the most effective for what we are called to do, that it's really challenging to admit that we may not be able to meet everyone's needs. And that may be an expectation that we have to work at coming to a place of peace with. So Chris and I use the word trade-off. It actually comes from a book that I'm going to refer to later on. And we have to challenge each other, Chris and I do, very often about the trade-offs. The question we like to ask one another is, if you're going to do X, what are you going to give up? Because like everyone on this webinar, we are inundated with good ideas all the time. And so if he and I go down the pathway of discussion about agreeing to accept some idea, some good idea, then we also have the expectation of one another that we call out, what are we going to stop doing? And so I think that is a reflection of the challenges that I'm seeing reflected in the Q&A.
Well, I think as we jump into kind of the reality of where we are as it relates to our world today, there's a lot that we've given away. So we really want to highlight for you, you are not alone. We are not alone. And we are hopeful that we can open our eyes to our decision, our choice to reclaim our focus for our own and to get away from this treadmill of distraction and move to a more intentional place of discernment. So we'll kind of shift into this space where we can kind of share with each other. Yes, we feel the pain, but Chad and I both believe that once you see it from a different lens, you can't unsee it. So really want to work kind of into this space where this is real. These are real things that we know not just Catholic leaders struggle with, but humans struggle with. So I hope we choose the red pill to open our eyes here as we move forward.
This quote from the book that I mentioned earlier, Essentialism, the author is Gregory McEwen. And it's a pretty easy read if you're the kind of person that likes to read books and learn from some of the ideas. This quote stands out to me. And it is a reflection of the dialogue that Chris and I often have to challenge one another about making thoughtful and intentional decisions about where we're going to invest our attention. Essentialism, that's the phrase that McEwen uses, is not about how to get more things done, it's about how to get the right things done. And this is where he introduces the idea of trade-offs, that the trade-off of doing the right things is often doing more things. And so we're calling that out. It's something that we constantly have to push each other in, is making sure that we are doing the right things. And within a Catholic context, that always has to be about the mission of our schools, the mission of the school as a mission of the Catholic Church.
We also, I think, want to make this pragmatic and understand that we are living in a real economy where Catholic schools have to find a path to thriving and sustainability. So not only do we feel like this is a personal practice that can help you as a profession, but it also takes on the sense of what do we need to do to make Catholic schools and leadership relevant. And so we wanted to bring this in so that you understand that the economy of attracting and keeping people's attention is in fact a driver of success. And we also feel that there is really a legacy of what we're doing as leaders that we also want to build as an aspirational goal for our students, because they are living in a very distracted and noisy world too. So we really want you to see the layering of both the sacred and the secular in this. It's both a spiritual journey, but there's something real about this, about how to understand this at a greater level. And imagine if your prospective donor or family or your marketing was kind of driven from this very building block place of how do we attract and keep people's attention? What are the things that we need to do to kind of get through the haze and the fog that appears to kind of be around all of us? So we wanted you to be sure that this is also driven. This conversation is also driven from that place of, how do we get better at the things that we're going to be measured on?
So the theme of this set of slides is discernment versus distraction. And so Chris and I believe that distraction often occurs through busyness, having lots of things to potentially react to take care of. So McEwen offers this challenge. What if we stopped celebrating being busy as a measure of importance? What if instead we celebrated how much time we had spent listening, pondering, meditating, and enjoying time with the most important people in our lives? We often hear, and probably people on this webinar, maybe you've heard this said, we will often use being busy as a measure of our importance. I even heard someone refer to it as a form of the humble brag. How are you doing? Oh, busy, busy, busy. But the intention is that it's a measure of our worth and of our importance. And it's really challenging to unlearn that impulse and that urge. What we are leading to in the third section is there's another way of thinking about this, where busyness is seen as a distractor and an obstacle to effective discernment. And so in just a few minutes, we're going to offer you a framework to counter that distractibility of busyness and maybe aim for something else that's reflective of this idea of vision.
So as we transition to this last piece, which we hope is really going to be very practical for you, some things to try, Chad and I will share a little bit of our practices and habits. We just really, we believe very strongly that we are called to be the bastions of being countercultural. The world we know rewards people that are burning the candle on both ends. They have more to do than they can accomplish. But the reality of what we're asking you to consider is that there's a different way. And we know that in order to sustain and to maintain and to thrive in a place of leadership for Catholic schools or service to Catholic education, there has to be intentional work around clarity, stillness, and purpose. And so this is the movement. This is where that focus and interstate changes actions or behavior. This is what we're asking of you to think about in our sharing with you today, is how do you move from always reacting, always putting out fires, to a more reflective space so that we can better evangelize, shepherd, and really build culture in our schools that inspires people to do the same. So we're going to go into part 3, which we believe is really the meat of what we wanted to share with you today as we kind of set the stage with first, attention is a gift to be stewarded. Second, you have a choice between discernment and distraction. And now third, what Chad and I have found to be really practical tools. So I'll let Chad jump in and kind of frame this for us.
I was looking back at the Q&A comments about the items that are hijacking people's attention. And I think that there's a lot of commonality with the experiences of everyone involved in Catholic education and people who have multiple layers of responsibilities in life. And so this, I think, is maybe a different way to think about the challenge of trying to address a wide variety of responsibilities that we feel. And so there's one item in here in particular that I'll stop at in just a second and highlight that in that context of the Q&A comments that were made. So this slide is titled hallmarks of attention management. So what I'm inviting you to do is think about this in terms of a mindset. You have two mindsets that are represented on this slide. You have a reactive mindset and a conscious mindset. And each mindset has certain characteristics to it. So the goal here is to embrace a conscious mindset. And if you can see the qualities or the characteristics of a conscious mindset on the right-hand side of that slide, conscious mindset is characterized by single tasking, where you are focused on doing one thing at a time. There's lots of recent brain research that indicates that when we are engaged in multitasking, that actually it takes us longer to accomplish things and is less effective. And by multitasking, we mean something like, well, usually when people talk about multitasking, what they really mean is what we call task switching. Frequently going back from one task to another. We're not talking about like walking and chewing gum at the same time. That's not really multitasking. But if you have multiple projects or multiple things that you're trying to attend to that require attention, going back and forth is really task switching. The only items or things in the world that can truly multitask are computers. They are designed to multitask, to operate several functions at one time. The human brain is not really wired to do that. So we don't really do that. We really just single task, but we just do that back and forth. So having a mindset of single tasking, doing one thing at a time and being attentive to that. Having conscious attention management allows you to emphasize more having scheduled time. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Having a focused mindset is a hallmark of conscious communication. Now, this next item, I think, reflects some of the things that we saw in the Q&A feedback, saying yes selectively and less often. Chris and I have even had to train ourselves in how we can more effectively use what we call the positive no. There are ways of saying no or redirecting requests that are made of us, especially if they are not mission aligned or aligned with the vision of what it is that we are trying to accomplish. And so being intentional about how you can say yes less frequently and say no more frequently in favor of a higher purpose, vision, or mission. This next one is something that we all struggle with, thoughtful use of devices. Just before our webinar today, Chris and I were reading through some suggestions for how we can continue to hone our own practice for attention management. And he came across the idea of having scheduled times that you put your phone into airplane mode. And so that's a practice that I'm going to try out. Sometimes these things you have to try out and see how they work for you. So my committed action that I'm going to make from today's webinar is to starting tomorrow, identifying 1 hour per day when I put my phone into airplane mode. This training program that Chris and I are part of, called the Stegan Leadership Academy, it even uses the phrase electronic leash, thinking about your phone or your computer or your laptop as an electronic leash. And so having thoughtful use of your devices is a way that you can have conscious attention management. And then another strategy that we're going to talk more deeply about in just a moment is this idea of structural or rhythm meetings versus ad hoc meetings. You have some meetings in your day that occur on a regular basis. And so what we're going to advocate for is that you put those in your calendar, whether that's digital or a hard copy, an analog calendar, and create places in your calendar where those can be protected time and that you can make more efficient use of your time for those meetings. So keeping in mind this mindset, having a conscious mindset with regard to attention management.
So Chad mentioned our practice of attention management has been born out of a leadership development program that we've embraced here at Bishop Lynch High School. He and I both have been in a leadership development journey for ourselves with this partner, Stegan, and they have an integral leadership program that he and I both have participated in. So with their permission, we are sharing what we have found to be a very, very important visual to help us be mindful of 4 key attention zones that most human beings find themselves. And so we wanted to share this with you so that you can have kind of a better understanding of where some of these tools that we're going to share with you next are coming from. And so as you kind of look at the 4 quadrants of this chart, you have proactive, reactive, distraction, and waste zones. And so, as a leader, we really started to think about what do we need to do to be more proactive and not passive, waiting for things to happen and for us to be the catcher of pitches that are coming across the plate our way. So this was very, very beneficial to us as leaders, especially because we really started thinking about what does leadership call us to, and that is in our role as administrators, but it can also be practical to people in a classroom setting or even in a personal setting in your family. What's the role of leadership, and what are you providing witness to for your spouse, your partner, or your children, right? So this idea around things like planning and preparation, strategic activities, but these other pieces about building reserves, maintenance, and renewal being centered in this idea of proactive work really helped me personally to give myself permission to prioritize things that were going to be better for me from a physiological standpoint and a psychological standpoint, so that I could give myself permission to detach from something that was an administrative task or a responsibility in my job description to remind myself that, hey, I also have to take care of myself as a human being. Otherwise, I won't be in a position to show up for the people who need me the most. And so this was a good reminder of things that we hear all the time, especially like when you're riding in air travel today. You always have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you help someone else, right? So this was something that I felt was like really strong for me to be reminded of, how do we look at this? And so the dynamic of this chart is something that Chad and I have worked with and studied and introduced to other people on our campus, with the idea that we need to know where we are, like, and call it what it is. And so we both have this graphic available to us, and we reference it frequently, so that as we talk about a weekly focus practice that we'll introduce to you next, we look at our activities of the last week and we actually assign it some attribution in one of these areas. And so we can actually look back and kind of audit where we were, what we did, and we can look at it from a kind of a higher level and say, what percentage of my time was in proactive, reactive, distraction, or waste? And then we can make adjustments. So again, this is really about increasing awareness. Where are you? And then making decisions about what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And then try to decide, if you get that time because you eliminated something you don't want to do, where should you strategically invest it? So this idea of the motion of where you are, where you want to be, and what decision you make next is a really important piece of developing a discipline, developing a practice for yourself, which is really kind of the centerpiece of the tools that we're about to share with you. Chad, where does this chart show up for you? I know this is something that you and I have had as a part of our kind of visual representation around our space for a long time.
Yeah, this has been so, I would say, impactful for life and then for the work that we do. I just wanted to give an anecdote that illustrates that for me. A couple of years ago, I began a process of a quarterly, it's just shortened to PQO, which stands for a personal quarterly offsite. And I take a half a day and I go off campus. I use PTO for it, and I use it to focus on personal goal setting, things that I need to tend to in my spiritual life. It's something that's similar to a personal retreat, but it's not as long as a retreat. It's only a half a day for me. I might do some resting, or I may maybe I'll take a walk or play with my dog or something like that. And at first, I felt guilty doing that. It felt indulgent and it felt unnecessary because I wasn't working. And it took me a good year at least to become comfortable with the intentionality behind it, which was trying to remain in the proactive zone at least for a half a day, for a PQO. So intellectually, I understood why it was important because I was using it for a strategic activity, lots of planning and preparation, building reserves. I was using it for that purpose, but my programming and years of conditioning made it challenging for me to do that, and to do it in a way that I didn't feel guilty about, because I felt like I needed to be at school reacting to things, reacting to the demands of others. And through lots of discernment and reflection, through this process that we're talking about today, I've gotten much better about recognizing why this is important. It's because the proactive zone allows you to focus on the things that are the most important. It's that idea found in Proverbs. It allows me to remain focused on the vision so that I can do whatever preparations I need to do to maintain that proper level of focus, but also preparation. So it is a journey. You have to unlearn some old habits, some old mindsets. I had to unlearn that reactive mindset and be much more intentional about living out a conscious mindset with regard to attention management. The other thing that has really impacted me is the relationship between the proactive and reactive zones. Chris, could you go back just for a second?
Yep.
So Chris and I, we often teach this to other people, other groups. I have an internal group that I teach this to, emerging leaders within the school, and Chris is currently doing this with external constituents and stakeholders, with our alumni and supporters of the school. And one of the things that I see over and over is a question about the right relationship between the proactive and reactive zones. And, people often ask, well, should I aim to be in the proactive zone all the time? And the answer to that is no, because our jobs require some proper proportion of proactive and reactive zone. There are times in the day when it is our job, it is our responsibility to react to situations, or to react to problems that people may bring to us, or to react to people. That is part of the job. The question is, how do you right size that for what your responsibilities are? So if your responsibilities are to focus more on strategic planning and resourcing, then more of your day ought to be centered around being in the proactive zone. If your role, however, requires a higher degree of reactivity toward others, then maybe more of your role ought to be focused on the reactive zone. So that might call for a higher percentage of your time. So the relationship between the proactive and reactive zones is dependent on the person in the role. What is consistent is the percentage of the distraction and waste zones. Those are things that you want to drastically reduce and ideally eliminate. And the time that you save from distraction zone or waste zone, you want to reinvest that time in proactive. So once you can shrink, and that's why in the lower right-hand corner it says invest. Those you want to reinvest in the proactive zone. So recently, I have a member of a cohort that I'm currently working with on this very topic. And she had made a mistake in showing up for a meeting. And so she had something that she thought she was supposed to be at, but it was just a miscommunication about the calendar. So she had a found hour of her time. And so I asked her, I said, so you had an hour, where did you reinvest that? And she said, I turned my computer off and I did some planning with my calendar. And so she reinvested that time using this vocabulary in the proactive zone. So there are lots of different ways that you can use this structure for managing your attention so that you can reinvest that in the proper place, which we would advocate is the proactive zone.
So as we kind of come to a close with our time with you, there's 3 tools that we would like you to have as a takeaway, and we'd like to be able to give you this as a challenge of sorts, but also as an opportunity to try 1, 2, or all 3 of these tools that we believe could help you to do that very thing that Chad just mentioned about how do you take away or to reduce time and waste and distraction and strategically reinvest it in proactive. That way, you have the bandwidth, the energy, the resources to be as flexible as you need when your reaction time needs to increase significantly. So we hope that this is about building a reserve so that you're available and ready to tackle when crisis does arrive, but that you're more intentional about constantly building that proactive quadrant and making that a larger part of your everyday existence. So these are the 3 things that we'd like you to try. So Chad, we tell them a little bit about what each of these 3 things is.
Weekly focus is a time every week, ideally an hour, that is about the proactive zone, where you pick a day, you pick a time, that it's always the same, it's a recurring event, and you dedicate that time to planning out the following week and looking at the week that's just passed. Now, it's connected to time block. So the idea of putting a time on your calendar where you are dedicated just to this purpose shows that these 2 things go together. If you can engage in weekly focus, you are signaling to yourself and to all of those that are in your group, in your team, or others that you work with, that this is dedicated time to engaging in the high-level proactive work of planning. Now, we advocate doing this on a Friday afternoon. The reason is because Friday afternoon is a good time where things are you're still in the office, you're still at school, you still have people around, but things are starting to slow down. The challenge with doing this over the weekend is that if the weekend is supposed to be time for recharging, renewing, spending time with those that you love, that can undermine what it is that you are trying to do. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule, because sometimes it works out better for your personal scheduling to do it, say, on a Sunday evening. So I would just ask you to consider, maybe try it out, give it a trial run of doing of setting a time block on a Friday afternoon, and do that on a weekly basis so that you can engage in your weekly focus. So for myself, I use a digital calendar through Outlook, and I have a time block every Friday at 1:30, and that's what I sit down and do. And I have an executive assistant, so she and I have a standing meeting every Friday at 1:30, and we spend an hour we have like our own agenda, and it's all proactive items. And if there's anything in there that I need her help in reacting to, then it sounds overly scripted, but I actually have a little bit of planned reaction time during that time period. So there may be things throughout the week that pop up, and if it's something that I can address on Friday during that time block of weekly focus, I drop it into a folder in my email inbox so that I can have that time to react to it during my time block and weekly focus. This is a linchpin practice. So out of all of the attention management practices, I would start with this. If you're looking to improve your attention management, setting aside one dedicated hour each week, same day, same time, 1 hour to do this work, I think that you will see some results. So that would be a challenge that I would issue to everyone on this webinar, is to start with the time block of a weekly focus.
Yeah, so I'll just mention too, the appointments with yourself is a practice that Chad mentioned about dealing with the guilt of like taking proactive time for planning. Really, really important that can fit a professional or a personal need for proactive work for that maintenance or rebuilding. And so I was challenged by this practice at first because that was usually the first time I would give away if there was going to be a conflict or someone else needed that time. But you really have to think about treating that appointment with yourself as if it were someone who asked for an appointment and you thought, man, this is a really important uh, person or issue that needs to be addressed. So to begin building that practice of making that something that is important. So in closing, we really feel strongly that the dignity of the work that we do is really kind of the proving ground for why we're doing this and why we decided to share this webinar for you. And I think that we all know that we want our work to be life-giving and not life-taking. And we feel very, very strongly that with some intentionality and some consciousness, you all can move toward a more proactive practice of attention management. We're really thankful that you spent this time with us today. It's such an honor to be able to share a little bit of our journey with others. And we're hopeful that you can take away one of the 3 ideas that we gave you for a tool for strengthening your attention management. And kind of wanted to leave you with what we believe are kind of the 3 critical pieces for paying better attention, not only for those you serve, but for stewarding the gift of who you are and the purpose that you are here to serve in this world. So, Chad, any closing thoughts from you?
I think maybe look at that last slide from the NESBECs. You know, this is important work for us because through the lens of the national standards, this provides some focus for the work that we do, kind of from a standards perspective. These are all key words that we know are important for our leadership. We would consider this a practice of excellence, focusing on vision, trying to dedicate time and making some strategic decisions about how you are going to manage your attention. These are the things that are important for us: faith formation, Catholic identity, academic excellence, and operational vitality. This is just a different kind of vocabulary that informs the vision that we all want to have so that we can function at a level that we know we are capable of and that the people that we are serving deserve from us. So Chris and I'd like to take the opportunity to respond to any questions or comments that you all have. I know it's a lot. We've unloaded a lot in the last 60 minutes. So we just like to take a minute to respond to any of those questions that you guys might want to introduce into the chat, to the Q&A.
We would love to connect with any of you offline, so please find us at the Bishop Lynch High School website, bishoplynch.org. And once again, we're humbled and honored to be able to share with you just a little slice of our journey in Catholic education. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody. God bless.
Chad, Chris, gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing. If I may just jump in to say thank you. While anyone wants to put a question in the chat, you are more than welcome. I want to thank them for sharing with us today. It was a privilege to learn from them, and the gift, a simple reminder that managing attention is a moral act. Sounds like lots of linchpin practices are happening down there at Bishop Lynch High School. So thank you to our online attendees for being here and engaging so thoughtfully. Your input is invaluable as we work to strengthen our service to you. Please take a moment to complete the short survey that I will share in the chat to receive a certificate of attendance. Enter your full name and email at the end of the survey. It will be sent to your inbox shortly afterwards. May we continue to build up the kingdom of God by forming not only informed students, but faithful, present-hearted teachers and leaders, attuned to God's voice, attentive to one another, and grounded in purpose. May God bless you in your work as you continue to aspire and focus, renewal, and transformation in our Catholic schools and communities. Thank you and God bless.